Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's the Jade Gemini. Tonight, I wanted to go ahead and bring a just short and quick video response that actually kind of popped into my mind when I'm actually talking to a friend. So I had a conversation with a friend recently, and he's looking for a knife, and I distinctly remember him saying, well, I want to make sure that it's American made, And then I was kind of like, well, have you looked at, these different brands, from China? And, it was like, well, I want quality, so I want American. So we kind of waited about 3 months, and I touched base, and I'm like, I think I have a perfect knife for you, and it meets these criterias. And he started talking about, different options, that he ended up going ahead and seeing. And he said, oh, Kershaw's an American company. What about this one? And I said, well, that one's Chinese made. And it's not the good, Chinese made necessarily. That's like a quality Chinese company. And he said, well, how do you know the difference? And so tonight I actually kind of wanted to go in and talk about maybe what that means. Like, a bad Chinese brand or a Chinese made knife, and then a good Chinese knife, and just sort of my ideals overall, not trying to get too, political, but just kind of straight down the line the way I look at it, right? So let's go and kind of jump right in and see what we first have on the table. So from sort of least expensive to most expensive, we have a Qsp Penguin, which is an amazing knife I've reviewed. And it is $30. And for that $30, wow, do you get a lot. We'll kind of talk about some of those things that you get with the knife. The next sort of bracket is representative of Civivi. This one's about $75, but again, this is kind of representing anything from the Elementum, to the bow, and so on and so forth. So smooth. And then we have sort of the next tier up, sort of that 100 to 150. You have a knife I absolutely love, the Kaiser Yorkie, Ray Laconico design, and then my favorite knife of all time, the Riat made Giant Mouse, which is Vox and Anza, which are two of my favorite designers. This is the Riv. So where to kind of start? So I guess sort of how can you tell the difference is what he asked. So again, I have, and again, I'm always learning. I'm no life expert, but I have spent years and months and months and months researching and looking and finding out and hearing these names. And when Civivi came out and we came out, I was researching about those, and then I heard, oh, this is such a great knife. The Qsp Penguin is so cheap, right? And then of course, Kaiser was the first, flipper with the splinter that I ended up going ahead and getting. That was like a titanium frame lock that was like a premium, sort of the knife. And then of course you hear through the grapevine, oh, Riat. I mean, I hear guys that literally only buy American knives say, oh, well, I would buy a Riat. And just sort of those conversations, ended up going ahead and having. So over time, I've sort of developed an understanding of what the difference between a Chinese-made knife is that is not quality, kind of like your gas station knife, or again, kind of like I mentioned with like a Kershaw or a CRKT, that are okay. And again, I'm not trying to offend anybody if you love those brands. There's designs that I love from the brands and makers, Vox knees and stuff like that, that I love from those brands too. But I would probably cut it like this, first of all. So if you have a brand like Kershaw, for example, they're an American-based brand that's owned by a Japanese company, but again, they're kind of considered American-based brand, so is ZT, definitely. And then they make something overseas in China, it's purely to save money. That's the motive. If you have a brand like Spyderco, even though the Tenacious is, pretty decent, there are, some sharpnesses and some different, finishing and things like that are missing on those. The reason why Spyderco has a Chinese is simply to save money, right? Now, to not get political, I don't agree with communism. That doesn't mean I necessarily vote one way fully or another way fully, but just clean cut down the line. I don't agree with that. I think there's great parts of all different sort of stuff that to take inspiration from and learn from, right? But just in a whole, I'm not, really saying that I would ever agree with just point blank communism, right? But that out of the way. When you have a brand like Civivi, Kaiser, Riot, definitely, even QSP, these are people from China. They were born in that country. They didn't choose to say, you know what, I want to be a communist. Please pick China and let me be born in China. And I fully and blindly support communism. No, they were born in a country, right? And they kind of have to deal with the cards they're given. So, with these brands, they are Chinese-based brands. They're not, an Italian brand that makes some things in China on their cheaper line, or, again, an American brand that makes it, you get the point. These are Chinese brands. And the thing about them is that instead of saying, you know what, I'm going to take me, I'm going to take my family, I'm going to take my community, and I'm just going to work in a sweatshop, right? And then, have those moral dilemmas and bases and things like that end up going ahead and coming, some like big box sneaker companies that have this problem with a certain, logo on it. Instead of doing that, they say, you know what, I'm passionate about knives, and I want to pull up my community, I want to pull up, my family, I want to do better than working in that environment. So you know what, I'm going to, with the resources that I have, I'm going to open a knife company, right? So the people at Civivi, right? Yes, so we as a big company, and so is Civivi, but they are enthusiasts, right? They're people that really, end up going ahead and caring about that. And, the people that they have, under them, they are people who are machinists, people who, know about engineering, marketing, everything like that. They're not forcing sweatshop people to engineer their knives, right? They are going ahead and sort of bringing together all these people from all these talents and making, a decent working company that's, passionate and thriving. Same thing about, QSP, even though it is on the, value line, they do make some nice stuff as well. And they, say that they stand for, quality, stand for a good value for money and dependability as their sort of three main pillars or something along those lines. Same thing with Kaiser, the designers actually ended up going ahead and, kind of helping running the company. Some of the people in marketing end up making designs as well. And then, of course, Riot, the owner of Riot himself, is kind of the perfect example of this. Ended up going ahead and making a company because he's such a knife freak and wanted to learn every single thing he wanted. Actually learned from one of the greatest designers, Todd Begg. Wants to improve, how can I do hand satin finishing to look like custom knives? How can I get the tolerance, everything like that? So now, even though this is a knife made in China, this knife is perfect in every single way. So when you say you have a Kershaw knife, the lock might disengage if you, push on it too hard. It might be, sharp. It might have blade play up and down, or, side to side that's uncurable. The action might be, stiff. The scales might be shifted and aligned, right? Things might be bowing off of the chassis. That is what I would consider a knife where you're buying it from China to cut corners. Where's the difference? Well, the difference is something like the Civivi. You get decent micarta, you have a deep carry clip, you have great finishing on the knife itself, fit and finish. You have details like lightning in the chassis. It's robust, it's stout. It has an amazing thin behind the edge grind. Look at that edge, it's actually semi-polished from the factory. And my God, has an amazing smooth action. Right? Same thing with the Qsp, $30, has one of the best actions that I've seen, and this is running on bronze and Teflon, right? But it is super smooth. Again, I talked about the Vox, amazing smooth action, it's snappy, it makes amazing noises, it's just perfect. Everything is well contoured, thought out, the lockup is perfect, the machining is perfect. There's nothing that's wrong with this knife. Nothing, right? Made in China. American-made knife, made in America, right? Centering off by quite a big margin. And again, this isn't representative of every single thing ever, but just to kind of display that it doesn't necessarily end all be all, And I always cheer, for the home team, but I do know it's easier to find a Chinese-made knife from one of these enthusiast Chinese companies, not an American. And I think that's really just clearly defined it, right? An enthusiast Chinese company is usually going to be something that you find better quality with perfect centering, early lockup, smooth action, great action, even grinds, nice finishing overall. Not perfect, like this is perfect example. This is a little bit more Chris Reeve matte on this side, and I noticed the other day this is a little bit more shiny, reflective, right? That's not perfectly even from the factory. But if that's the worst thing, I can take this somewhere and have them refinish it, right? And that might be the only 1 out of 100 that I got that actually has that problem, and the others don't, right? This doesn't have that problem. Of course, Riot instead of going ahead and being Kaiser, but still, perfect example, where, there can be issues, but for the overall, you're not even hardly noticing that, because of the rest of the knife. Another one, ZT, right? Zero tolerance is what it calls. No tolerance can be left unchecked, yet the whole entire blade is all set in the chassis, not centered, right? This side is thinner than this side, and I love this knife, don't get me wrong. This is an amazing knife as it is. Is the action as smooth, even with this heavier blade as the QSP? I don't think so, right? I have to crank this down way tighter to be able to have, no blade play and sacrifice a smoother action, where this, kind of almost like a bearing knife, I give as little tension as possible, and the blade play is quite clearly defined from now there's a little bit of blade play. Oh, now there's no blade play, but it's still smooth. I've had Benchmates, oh my God, where, I want Benchmade to succeed so much, but I've had Benchmade after Benchmade, made in America, made in Oregon, right? Where, it has up and down blade play. It has uncurable side to side blade play. If you tighten it down to where it finally has no blade play, the blade, you flick it and it's like, because it's so stiff throughout the entire knife, right? And then you're spending $160 or $170 for that knife when I can spend $170 for this and get perfection. So that's, there are knives that are so amazing that are made in America, right? Hogue, for example, is actually going ahead and kind of blasting through with that, taking and making an actual good Benchmade. Perfect centering, no play even when the knife is closed, is smooth. Did have play out of the box, but again, that was able to be tuned. Is insanely smooth. No, blade play in any sort of direction. All this amazing milling, throughout the whole entire knife. G10 chassis with cassette liners, cartridge liners, sorry. 20 CV, and all for about 160, right? So there's these really weird, perfect value companies, like Kershaw, right? Like Hogue, that end up making American knives where you're kind of breaking the rules, and it's kind of coming in close to what these Chinese companies offer. But again, this is like 2, and there are like 20 good, Benchmade, Qsp, but Qsp has some good one, Savivi, all day long, Qsp, Kaiser has a lot of different lines, you kind of get the point. There becomes a point at which, you have to kind of recognize the problems and also end up recognizing when somebody is doing something, not to just be cheap and make a buck, but actually like, oh, they're an enthusiast. They care about the knife community. They care about, just raw, the actual enthusiast community, and want to make these because they like knives like me. And just because they were born in their mother's womb in China, and at some point that's going to check a box of communism, even if they don't necessarily support that, but they're trying to make a better, like, who am I to say, I'm just, you know what I mean? That's at least my thought of it. And that's kind of my thoughts on what makes a good Chinese brand and maybe what doesn't. If it's just purely for profit and it's cutting corners, not really what I would, go ahead and try and stand behind. But if you have a good, decent product and you're kind of worried about just that it's made in China because of that, communism, think that you're putting food on somebody's table and a community of people's table that are doing it right, that are kind of breaking that mold of what the old gold sticker made in China used to mean, right? And maybe that's the kind of thing you want to support, that if you have to support something like that. So at least that's my thoughts. Don't want it to go too much longer than that. Really just wanted to make this quick video because it was kind of on my mind, and again, something I like to end up going ahead and talking about, just that maybe people aren't going ahead and thinking about, so often. Of course, if you have any sort of questions, leave them down below. Again, I'm not trying to get any sort of political. This is just a face value, kind of explaining the difference between enthusiast Chinese knives and, people cutting corner, Chinese knives, and kind of end up going ahead and going through like that. If you did like this video, go ahead and give a like down below. And if you like more content like this, hit that subscribe button, as we're closely growing to 1,000 subscribers, and I love pumping out content and fellowshipping with you guys. Of course, I hope everybody has a great rest of your evening. Stay safe. Peace.